There are moments in life so quiet they become the loudest things you've ever heard, and this was one of them. I stood in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and regret, and I made a promise I had no idea how to keep. She was 73 years old, my grandmother, and she had built her entire life around a single stubborn belief that the people she loved would be okay when she was gone. I leaned in close, took her hand, and whispered that I would finish my degree, the one I'd been casually abandoning for 2 years like a gym membership in February. Now, let's be honest about what that promise actually meant in that moment, because it wasn't really about a diploma. It was about proving to a dying woman that the years she spent driving me to school, packing my lunch, and believing in me against all available evidence were not wasted. The problem was, I had failed 3 courses, owed the university roughly $6,000 in outstanding fees, and had not set foot on campus in 8 months. If we're mapping this onto economic terms, I was essentially a failed startup with negative equity, a burned runway, and a founder who had pivoted into doing nothing. The optimism I once had about school had aged badly, like a tech stock that peaked in 2021 and then quietly collapsed while everyone looked away. Those early semesters felt electric, new notebooks, new ideas, the delusion of potential, and somewhere between the 3rd all-nighter and the 4th dropped class, the momentum just evaporated. Psychologists call this goal fatigue, but honestly that sounds too clinical for what it really is, which is just shame wearing a lab coat. You stop because the gap between who you told people you were and who you actually are becomes too uncomfortable to stand in. Here's the thing about promises made at bedsides. History is full of them, and history is also full of people who forgot them by the parking lot. But there's a smaller, quieter group of people who let those moments calcify into something structural, something they build decisions around, like a load-bearing wall. I went home that night, opened a spreadsheet, and listed every single obstacle between me and a completed degree, the way a general maps a battlefield before committing troops. $6,000 in debt, 3 failed courses to retake, 2 years of coursework remaining, and one very stubborn sense of inherited obligation. Step 1 was the money, because you can't register for classes you can't pay for, and inspiration without logistics is just a mood. I worked 2 jobs for 7 months, one in a warehouse starting at 5 in the morning, one waitressing on weekends, and I paid the university in 3 installments. Like, I was settling a debt with a loan shark I actually respected. Step 2 was harder because it required walking back onto a campus where people remembered me as someone who had quietly quit. There's a specific social physics to returning somewhere you left in failure. Every familiar hallway feels like it's narrating your backstory in a disapproving tone. But here's the misconception I want to smash directly. People think the hard part of keeping a promise is the sacrifice, but it's actually the consistency of showing up when the emotional fuel has burned off. Anyone can sprint on grief. The real discipline is studying for an exam 14 months later when your grandmother is gone and the urgency has faded into something more like background static. I adopted a brutally simple strategy. No grand gestures, no dramatic reinventions, just process. Small daily inputs, reasonable course loads, no skipping Mondays. And the non-negotiable rule that I would not let one bad week become the story of why I stopped again. 2 years and 4 months after that hospital room, I walked across a stage in a borrowed blazer and accepted a diploma that I had honestly thought at several points was going to outlive my ability to care. The moment wasn't cinematic, the music was too loud. I mispronounced my own name somehow, and I cried in a bathroom afterward, like a person having a completely private victory. The personal impact wasn't the degree itself, though it opened real doors and changed my financial trajectory in ways I'm still measuring. The impact was the discovery that I was actually capable of honoring something I said I would do, which sounds simple, but had not previously been part of my personal operating system. There's a broader truth here that applies whether you're keeping a promise, building a business, or surviving a difficult market. Conviction without structure is just noise, and structure without patience is just frustration. The people who finish things are rarely the most talented. They're the ones who kept showing up on the days when nothing about it felt worth it. My grandmother never got to see the diploma, and I've made peace with that in the way you make peace with things that will never stop being sad. What matters is that the promise was real, The effort was real, and the outcome was real, and that the version of me who made that promise in a quiet hospital room would recognize the version of me who kept it. If you take one thing from this, let it be that the promises that cost you the most to keep are the ones that change you the deepest. And if you like this video, subscribe and check out all our other topics.